Welcome to Future Focus, the Next Gen OD Canada podcast, your go-to source for insights and inspiration as you navigate your optometry journey.
Whether you're a student or a recent graduate in your first few years of practice, we're here to explore the topics that matter: career paths, job opportunities, board preparation, and more.
Each month, we'll bring you expert guests and practical tips to help you thrive in the world of optometry.
And just before we begin, we'd like to give a shout out to our sponsor, OSI Group. If you're thinking about building an independent practice, it's easy to see it as a solo journey, so a singular vision shaped by your own hard work and determination. But here's the thing, true independence is often best achieved in a community.
OSI Group empowers independent optometrists through community, education, and the resources they need to thrive. As a member, you get all the advantages of a large network while staying firmly in control of your future. Visit www.opto.com for more. So, let's shape the future of optometry together on Future Focus, the Next Gen OD Canada podcast. Welcome back to the Future Focus podcast. We are so excited to bring you Dr. Amal Ahmed, who is the owner of Beaumont Eye Clinic. And she's here to tell us about her journey, about purchasing a clinic and then kind of driving that clinic into her own specialty within dry eye. And we're really excited to have you. So welcome. If you can tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to pursue optometry in a rural setting, if I can say that. Yeah, I'll give you the mic.
So I'm born and raised Edmonton, and then I pursued my optometry career actually in the UK. And so I moved out there, lived there for quite some time. And when I came home, I kind of realized how saturated the market was. And then I sort of thought, you know what, I'm just going to work for somebody. It'll be easier. There's going to be, less things to think about. And then I kind of hit this sort of wall where I wasn't getting that job satisfaction anymore. And I just kept thinking it's too saturated. I don't want to open, in a big city. There's too much competition. And then I, started looking into what was available to purchase, and I crossed Dr. Mann's path. So he was the previous owner. And that really kind of cemented it for me that I had an opportunity to, go into this growing community. And, I didn't have to worry so much about, okay, is it going to be saturated or not? So that's kind of where, I kind of went in that direction.
Nice. I totally agree with how you felt when you just came out of just working in a place where you feel like it's oversaturated. That's a huge comment that I also heard in optometry school, that, if you work in a downtown setting, a suburb community, like it's so saturated already, you're going to have a hard time finding a job. And I find that just that fear alone, we should really be addressing for students, just knowing that even though there are areas where there are so many different practices, like on one street, at the end of the day, the patients are really going to stick with who's giving them the experience that makes them feel the most comfortable and the most confident, right? So even if you're not offering like the least expensive service, money and cost is not always the reason why people are going to go to another location. So even in a saturated market, I think everyone should still have the courage to open if there's an opportunity and like go for it and do what they want to do. But moving on to more, how you kind of purchased that practice and then started making it your own. What does your current practice look like now? And how did you navigate that opportunity when you were purchasing somebody else's practice?
So to be honest, I wish it was a better story, but a lot of the things I feel like kind of happened on a whim. I got home one day and I just, like I said, I wasn't satisfied. And I've actually been in optometry now since the age of 20. So I'm going on almost 17 years being in the industry. So I love the industry. I love what I do. And, I went on our association website, which, as a lot of these students are coming out, use your association websites for those job listings, when we're talking about buying practices. And, I came across Dr. Mann's little blurb and I went up to meet him, and honestly, just such a wonderful, humble guy. And his practice, he built it in 1990. So he was the first optometrist in Beaumont, and it needed a lot of upgrading. So he was, that we didn't have like autorefractor, he didn't have the retinal camera, didn't have the visual field. So I kind of walked in and thought, okay, this is going to be a lot. What am I going to do when I come in here? It needed a complete renovation. And so I kind of stepped back, thought about it for a week because I was thinking, okay, it's not turnkey. And then I had to stop myself and think, yeah, but you're getting 30 years of records. It doesn't matter that it's not turnkey. Right. And so, it kind of was seamless after that. I called him and said like, yeah, I'm interested. And he said, yeah, I think you're the right fit. And that meant a lot. He had been looking for somebody for some time. So I genuinely appreciated that he thought that. The whole process itself, I remember that was October 2021. And I didn't actually get the practice till June 2022. So going through financials, okay, what is the earning potential? And then the big thing is you have to do a business plan. So you've got to make sure, you've got somebody that you can lean on when it comes to, who you're banking with. And having to devise a business plan. Where do we see ourselves in 2 years? Where do we see ourselves in 4 years? What's my cost? What's my upfront cost? Having to put all that together, going through lawyers, transferring all that handover. So it did take time. It wasn't something overnight. And I think people have to also realize that this stuff doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, it takes energy, but especially when you're buying a practice, there's a lot more administrative, there's a lot more paperwork, right? And so, I acquired it in June and we did a 2-week renovation. So we shut down. We were shut for 3 weeks, gutted the place, put it back together. And I make it sound like a big one, but the office is 700 square feet. So it was easy. Quick, easy one.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of, it was just go from the beginning. And the minute we opened our doors, it was like this just rush of people. It was excitement because you're a small town. Everyone was like, something's new. Dr. Mann's getting ready to retire. Who's the replacement? It was curiosity. But I mean, from the minute we opened, we haven't stopped, right?
That's great.
I feel that that's a pro of purchasing a practice from a doctor who's about to retire and kind of hang up their white coat is that the longer that they've had that practice, obviously they've built a lot of trust with their patients. And so the fact that the patients know that OD hand selected you to take on the practice hopefully puts like a lot less pressure on you to please the patients and make sure that they like you.
It's way more pressure.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure, but at least the patients are aware too, like, oh, if this doctor's retiring, obviously they sold their practice to the right person or somebody that they liked so that the patients are more excited rather than, kind of negative or being like, oh, I'm not going to go here anymore if this doctor's not coming. It's like, no, this doctor chose me because we have a great relationship and we have the same values. So, it's hopefully less pressure that way for patients to want to stay rather than go somewhere else.
And I think it's the handover too. Like he was gracious enough. He stayed back for a year.
Mm.
And so he did a couple days a week. And I used to, sit in office and do the front desk and pre-test and introduce myself to patients. And I think that was a big one because now when they're coming back to see me, it's like, oh yeah, I met you the last time I saw Dr. Mann. So that's a really important part. And I think that can become lost when people take over practices. It's a quick changeover you need a little bit of that time. You need that goodwill, even if it's 6 months. Just give everybody an opportunity to say goodbye to the new doctor and, say hello or say goodbye to the old doctor, say hello to the new one, right? You want to have that seamless transition.
Yeah, that's so funny. I work in a clinic right now and the owner, she purchased from supposed to be retiring doctor, but he's still practicing 2 days a week. And we love him and he's great.
Do doctors ever retire?
Like it's tough to hang up the coat, hey?
Yeah. Well, I know with Dr. Mann, when we got to his, that last few days, he was gearing, he was ready to be done. But he put in all, it was 33 years he put into that community.
Wow.
That was a lot, right? So, I mean, I don't blame him for, being ready. And I think it was, we did it in a really comfortable way. I didn't make him change a lot of the way he was doing things. I let him kind of transition out the way he wanted to. And I think that was important. Not just, I came in and the office looked completely different, but I still let him practice the way he was comfortable practicing.
Yeah, that's huge. What have you found to be the biggest lessons or surprises transitioning from an associate to an owner? And this might not be something that new grads are thinking about, but maybe, once they've been practicing for a few years, they're thinking about transitioning.
I think, it's the amount of time you have to commit to owning a practice. And You're not just going to walk in and you're going to have 10 associates behind you. And it's a challenge and you have to be willing to take on that challenge. And I think the best advice I could give them is, like you said, a lot of them aren't going to rush in and be buying a practice, but be smart with your finances, right? Start saving, start preparing, because that was a really big asset for me, was at least having a little bit of that financial backing, that when I did this, it was easier to start from scratch in a sense, right? So if they have this, idea of they want to have a practice, like start from day one when you start practicing, start thinking about where do you need to be, what kind of finances you need to have, but also start looking. You never know, an opportunity could come up sooner than you think.
Yeah. I know a few ODs who were not thinking of owning their practice at all. And then all of a sudden they walk around the street, they see a for lease or for sale sign up, and then they get a real estate agent. And then all of a sudden, they're just thinking about it. That's also how we ended up opening up Northern Site Optometry. It was just Dr. Farvaha drove past the plaza that was being built and then was like, hey, there's only one unit left. Do you want to look into it? You just kind of jump on the opportunity when you can. Now I want to transition, Dr. Ahmed, more into practicing in a rural location, right? Because all of us students know when we're in school, we hear those pros and cons of where we can practice. And rural practice is so different than practicing in the suburbs and going back home to the big cities. So what are the main advantages you found working in and owning a rural practice, both professionally and financially, and maybe, what community impact is there?
Honestly, like to me, the majority of it is pros going into that role, because again, it's a small community setting. Everybody knows everybody. We're seeing 4 generations of families. I know the great grandparents, we're seeing everybody. And I find in the rural area, you get a lot of support from your other practitioners, so your MDs, your pharmacists, because when you're in that setting, if people don't have to travel, they don't want to. So I've actually seen a big boom in growth for me from a medical standpoint. I'm seeing a lot more of these, walk-ins for foreign bodies, diabetic health checks, because the doctors all around me are so supportive. They're sending their patients over straight away. The pharmacists as well, once they understand our scope. I really feel like my scope has improved. My diagnostic abilities have improved because I'm being challenged every day. The ophthalmologist isn't, a quick phone call away. Yes, we're not far from Edmonton. But the big thing with these small communities is they don't have to leave. They don't want to. And then the community support, they embrace me with open arms. And, we've got our patients have continued with us. Those who stopped coming have started coming in. It's a booming city. We've had loads of new patients, but the growth, it wasn't slow. I gave myself 5 years. I said, okay, you got 5 years to build this. And, we've grown so quickly because of the community support that, I said we're 700 square feet, but we're opening a new location soon.
Oh, that's great.
And it's a block away from where we are. And talk about small town, it's in an old house, right?
Oh, I love that.
Where are you going to get the chance to do that anywhere else? The fact that I got to grow so close to where I started, but then also that, when we talk about from a financial aspect, that's my investment now. That's my own. There is no lease component with that. So I feel like there's so many more opportunities to kind of gain that extra bit, whether it's, being able to purchase a property. I feel like that's a lot easier in those settings. You go into the cities and everything is a lease at the moment, right? It's really hard to find a unit you can purchase. So to me, it's just pro upon pro going into this rural setting. We're a small town, it's a city, we're a small city, but I can fill in these niches that weren't there because there's a demand for it. And with Beaumont's one of the fastest growing, small cities that we have. And I don't see why people would hesitate. To me, the only con, in all honesty, like being out in Alberta, it's those winter roads.
Yeah.
Winter hits and there are times where I think, okay, am I moving to Beaumont now?
You can live in your house.
Yeah, that's what everybody asks. They're like, are you moving in? Right? That's my only con, is the transport. So if you're thinking of going rural, that I think needs to be a big factor. How long is your commute? I know ODs who will commute over an hour to get places. Like, if that works for you, great. Is it sustainable? And that's kind of where I think people need to really factor that in. Is that rural community going to be where they're going to be able to settle, or are they going to have to, are they going to consider, okay, how long is my commute going to be in the winter now, depending on where you are. But I honestly think that's my only con.
Yeah. I think you should definitely have a little bed, a pull-out couch, maybe.
We built out because it's a walkout basement. It's pretty cool. So the basement's sort of our lab and like my office, the staff room, and we built out a little bathroom for them. And it's the first thing I thought was, should I put a shower in here?
Yeah.
We have a shower in our clinic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do.
Yeah. Because Olga was like, maybe we'll like work out, or she bikes to work sometimes. So we fully have a shower.
Yeah, because you guys are like downtown Toronto, right? So it's,
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, the previous owner, it was actually, she converted it to a law office. So she had it for 25 years. And the upstairs had a shower. And I was like, why do you have a shower in your office? She goes, some of the lawyers, she goes, we didn't have a gym before. We used to go for runs and come back and shower. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think I forgot the pull-out couch in the shower.
yeah.
Anyone running a clinic knows how hiccups can turn into headaches. Scheduling conflicts, misplaced orders, these minor setbacks steal time from patient care. Optisys keeps everything connected and running your way. Scalable, intuitive, proudly Canadian, it's this nation's leading EMR and PMS that's fully optometry owned.
Optisys brings harmony to your workflow with custom exam templates, inventory, catalog syncing, and more. And with OSI Group behind it, you're backed a partner that understands what it takes to succeed. See what Optisys can do for you at optisys.ca. OPTOSYS.ca.
I want to talk about how you specialize a bit in dry eye. Is that correct? And so how did you go about attracting patients to your specialty services? Like, how did you bring that in and introduce that in a smaller community? And what was the reaction?
So dry eyes has always been a big thing that I was interested in. And yeah, I think that was another driver for me going down the, becoming a clinic owner, because you are sort of driven sometimes. If you don't have clinics that are wanting to expand, it's hard to then grow. And so that was sort of where it was, okay, it was time for me to get my own space so I could do this. But I also knew I wasn't just going to walk in and buy an IPL and a radio frequency and expect to be making the big bucks from day one. So I took my time. I took a year and I started talking to more and more patients about dry eyes. Because again, from where the practice was before, there wasn't a lot of, products there. So I brought in, your eye mask, your eye drops, everything. And the first thing I did as well was bring in a mybographer. So I started doing mybography on everybody. And, we started with basics, like we're going to start with the mask, the drops, lid hygiene, everything. And then I started chatting to them more and more. I would do frequent follow-ups with them. And then at the second or third, I would say, hey, I'm going to be looking into bringing this, new technology in, and I think you'd be a great candidate. And so as the conversation started, we actually created a wait list. So it was a little bit of supply and demand, right? And we brought the IPL in. And first we did our trial patients. We had a couple that, we said, okay, if you come in, we'll do this for you and we can get some feedback and some reviews. So we started with the trial patients, and then we launched like an evening. And so we had different slots for the evening. People had to sign up. Oh, we have limited spots. Again, create the demand. And they came in and we did 4 groups and we walked them through. We did a presentation, showed them the IPL. I talked to them about the process. We discussed cost. We had, some prizes and things. And from that evening, we had about a 75% convert over and, sign up for IPL. So that was the biggest driver. And, a lot of the business is being driven now. I do get some referrals from like other ODs, which I, highly, recommend build those relationships with your other ODs. And then a lot of word of mouth now has kind of driven it. But the results, I had a patient where we, managed his rosacea. He was struggling for years, nothing worked. And the MDs, it was one of their patients. And, I get patients popping over going, oh, they said you can help my rosacea. Right? It's word of mouth. But my big thing was I didn't just believe in just, jumping into it. You have to take your time, because if you bring in this, you bring in this technology and you say, hey, I've got this and you've got dry eyes and it's going to cost this much. I haven't built a relationship with this community yet. So, I took that year to build and then I continued to invest.
Yeah.
That's great advice.
Yeah, I did the same thing with vision therapy. So our office provides BV assessments and vision therapy. And I was so excited to provide VT services when we built out the office. And that VT room was empty for the first year that we opened because I went really slow and I went like, no one in this area knows who I am. And, who knows what, the patients are thinking about therapy, if they trust it or not. And so it's so funny. I practice the same way as you. I follow up with all my pediatric patients on a 2 to 3 month basis. I really keep a close eye on them. And so every 2, 3 months, if they're not getting better, we talk about therapy. That's another option aside from glasses. And then lo and behold, like we've had like a handful, maybe 10 or 11 patients signed up for VT, and we've been open just under 2 years now. So in that second year, like I had so many VT patients just starting to enroll, and I felt pretty proud of myself because I did it like, by myself without any extra marketing tools or having like another OD like kind of bring them in for me. But yeah, it's true. You have to build that trust. So you really have to plan out, how long do I want to spend kind of priming these patients and educating them on things before seeing the benefits like really roll in. It does take time.
And I think that's the thing. It's patience is key in this, right? In anything, any journey anybody's going to start. You can't expect to, like I said, a lot of times you can't expect to just walk in it for it to be turnkey. You have to invest your time, but these communities need investment. And when they see you're investing, they invest back in you. I actually, was thinking about it. I've done minimal to no marketing. And we have grown 4 to 5 times bigger than what it was when I purchased it 3 years ago. The fact that we can grow and move. Like right now, I'm a 1-lane practice. I do my IPLs, everything. I do it all on my own. The new space is affording me 2 exam lanes and an IPL room. We can start delegating, we can start growing, we can start seeing more people, but we can better serve the community because we're going to have this space to do it. But that's the thing. These rural settings, if you invest in them, these communities rally behind you. They appreciate that somebody wants to come out and be a part of something, be a part of their community. And they will, like I said, the word of mouth for me, that's run my business for 3 years. That's it. I've probably done a little bit, very minimal marketing here and there, but otherwise it's word of mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that to be very true in any place that we work. And then even like for students, that are worried about what their career is going to look like when they come out of school, word of mouth applies not for just the practice that you're in, but for you as a doctor, right? So I'm sure the 3 of us here have all experienced at one point, if we switched clinics or we switched jobs and went somewhere else, some of our patients are going to tag along and they're going to find us, right? They're going to Google us and go, where'd that doctor go? Where are they practicing now? And they follow us. So that's even building your word of mouth referrals, like just for yourself, right? Not even associated with the practice that you're in. So it's really, really good to work on that.
No, it is true because I've had, like I said, Beaumont to Edmonton isn't a far distance, but I've had, really good traction coming in from Edmonton. And it's, it's humbling. It's humbling to see that people are willing to, travel a bit of distance for you. But it is how you build those relationships. And I think when a lot of those ODs come out of school, that's something that you're never 100% taught that in school. And that's the biggest thing. You've got to work on that because that could be part of them building their own practice. Even if whether they go rural, whether they go big city, if you already build that patient base and you put, 2-3 years into it or even just 12 months and you move, if you build that relationship, people will follow you and people will travel. This is the thing I've learned. I have people traveling sometimes unexpected distances, but if you take your time with them, they're invested.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And we'll wrap it up with just like 2 more questions that are more specific to, again, your experience of purchasing a practice in a rural setting. Were there any sort of rural specific incentives or programs that, supported your journey into becoming the owner of this rural practice, either through like the negotiating process with Dr. Mann or through, independent practice companies like OSI that support independent practices? Anything like that that's more rural specific for you that helped you grow?
Not necessarily in terms of like any incentives that had come in. I know, having OSI has been like an asset as well, just kind of that helping with practice managing, to be honest, because again, that was brand new for me. So it was kind of really easy to amalgamate everything going through having that opportunity with the buying group. But in terms of like any incentives, even from a financial aspect. At that stage, there really wasn't. But the fact that I was purchasing a pre-existing practice made the, getting financing easier because I already had somewhere to start. I already had a practice that had patients. So I had less hesitation with the bank in a sense, because that's a big part of it. But even with this move, when when I found this property and we needed to close the deal really quickly and the bank just said, yeah, okay. And it was done in 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So like that was kind of a big one, is because it was, established and I was moving an established business to another space. That actually made it a lot easier, which is going to be a big thing. Like when people have to factor that in when you do a cold start, it's not that the bank isn't going to finance you, they will, but they are going to want a lot of that detail. They're going to want to see that, okay, this person can handle building this practice and it's going to be profitable.
Yes. Yeah. That was actually my situation. So with Northern Side Optometry, Dr. Farvaha and I started from scratch. We leased a location in Vaughan. And when we leased it, it was a shell. So there was a concrete floor, metal structures holding the walls up, and one light bulb dangling from the ceiling. So that was it. And we had to install sprinklers, install the plumbing. Like we had to do everything from scratch. So I really wish that we purchased a practice that was already established, because you're right. There is way less of a hassle, less of a headache, less financial burden. But even then, the banks were very comfortable giving us any amount of loan to handle whatever we needed financially to get the practice going. But yes, they did dig in a lot more. They looked into any spousal support, any of your additional incomes. What are your other jobs that you may maintain while you're opening up this practice so that you can help pay off your loans? Like they really do look into all of that, which is good because they're also protecting you to make sure you're not going in over your head, right? That you're not opening something that you really cannot afford to pay back those loans. But banks know that healthcare will always be successful, right? Because people need eye care. The population is ever growing. And again, like we said, even though there's competition down the street, people also choose to go where they get good service. So honestly, almost any practice is going to be successful no matter how you start.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think we want to just ask, what is one final piece of advice you would give to new grads, those who maybe are considering rural optometry, or you may be looking for an associate?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Especially with the growth, that's the thing. I would love to take a long holiday.
Yeah.
But my big thing would be to anybody, especially considering rural, get out there and see what the community's like. You want to get an idea for what the community like, what services do they have? What's their scope, in terms of family doctors, dentists, physio, everything. But start building those relationships early. I lucked out that, I found somebody who was selling a practice. But if you look at a lot of what's happening, a lot of times people are selling their practice to their associate, somebody who's built those relationships with them and with the community. And I think if you can get out there and, the reality is start looking around at these practices and, look at the age of these optometrists. Are they getting ready to retire? And if they are, and it's something that fits in, get in there, but start having the conversation early. And I mean, every practice I, started in, I remember I was, in 3-4 different clinics. And I remember at some stage in the beginning, I did sort of say, so, would there ever be an opportunity to buy in? And, some of them were like, yeah, this is something we can think about. Others were like, no, that's not what we're looking for. So I already knew, okay, this is where I might have a future. And I think that's a big thing is when you take on these jobs, you need to be black and white about what your expectations and anticipations are. One, you don't want to get disappointed. And two, you also want to make sure you're investing your time in the right place. But, get out there, see who's out there, start having those conversations. You have to get your foot in the door because buying a practice could be a very quick process or it could be very slow depending on that optometrist, right? To me, I'm big on investing in students. I have a whole bunch of students who are going to optometry school that, come through my clinic. I have 2 already in school. But I look at that from a perspective of these guys could potentially be my future investment, right? And I think that's really important. Build the relationships right when you come out, but ask the right questions. And if you are looking to go into practice ownership, make sure wherever you're, finding an opportunity that you actually can do that. And timeline, you want to ask timeline. You're going into a practice and this OD's, in their 30s. Are they really going to be looking to partner up or sell? No. But you walk in, you get an OD in their 50s, 60s, they're thinking about it. So, manage those expectations. Don't walk into a new clinic. I mean, if anybody walked in your door right now and said, hey, how's it going? Can I, partner in a year or two? You're not there. You're not there yet.
Absolutely not.
Right? So it would be hey, you can come and join us and maybe we could talk about this. But the reality is that conversation isn't going to happen for a decade.
Yes. That's a huge one too. I've been in that position before, and I think it's tough to know when an owner is really being truthful about that, opportunity for ownership. And I've spoken to a lot of new grads about that, and it seems like it happens often where, to get an associate in the door, they'll sometimes offer that or just say, yeah, down the road there's always an opportunity for ownership, but ask those detailed questions, and then ask, every year when you're renegotiating your associate contracts, when you're discussing things with the doctors at meetings. I've been here for 2 years now, 3 years. What does that journey look like now? And if they're still kind of giving you a runaround answer, I'd say I don't have hope that they're really going to follow through with it. So if you really want practice ownership, then, start looking elsewhere for someone who's going to give you a more honest, thorough answer. Because I'm very honest. I have had a few people ask me, and my practice is only 2 years old. And I'm like, no, absolutely not.
I'm not surprised though. People do. They're expecting, it straight away. I mean, with myself, if anybody, like I'm, starting to think, okay, I'm going to want to look at, getting somebody full time and, starting the interview process. And I mean, if anybody asks me and says, hey, can I partner? I think about like, I've put 3 years of my life into this place and growing it, and it's very rewarding, but there's other rewards I have yet to get. It's not a conversation I would be ready to have yet. Things could change. I might want to have that conversation in a year, but it could be another 10 years. So I think that's a really big one. Like you're right. You have to keep asking every year because you don't want to put 5, 10 years in for that person to then either sell elsewhere or turn around and say, actually, never mind.
Yeah, never mind. I'm going to practice for another 30 years. And then you're like, oh, here we go. Yeah. That was wonderful advice, Dr. Ahmed. And thank you so much for sharing your journey in opening or owning a rural practice. I think learning more about rural optometry is really, really helpful for students and new grads too, right? New grads who are burnt out, living in downtown cities, right? I mean, yeah, if there's so much saturation and you're getting exhausted with trying to keep up with all the demands, drive on out into the woods and, see what other opportunities are out there. I would love to be in a rural practice, but I can't leave my practice now. So I'm too deep into it.
It's all right. You're well established. And that's the thing, like rural settings may not be, the right spot for everyone. But honestly, I think if somebody's looking to invest in a community and really kind of build those types of relationships, working in the city is great. I did it for a long time, but it's a different environment. And if you're looking for somewhere to settle down and really, put roots down, to me, the rural setting is ideal.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you so much. I loved our convo and I'm excited to see your new practice.
Yeah. Wishing you all the best of luck in your second location. You should definitely share pictures on Instagram once you get your bed and shower installed.
We've done some befores. We're getting ready to start doing the afters very, very soon. So hopefully just a few more weeks.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Future Focus, the Next Gen OD Canada podcast.
You can find us on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. For episode summaries and more resources, visit us at eyecarebusiness.ca.
Be sure to follow Next Gen OD on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn for updates, news, and more insights into the world of optometry.
And this episode was brought to you by OSI Group, where connections, coaching, and collective buying power support your independent vision. Visit www.opto.com for more.
Don't forget to check out the show notes at eyecarebusiness.ca. Until next time, stay focused on your future.